Okay, in this video I'm going to give you my take on The Orville after this. I'm the oldest nerd, and in this video we're going to talk about The Orville. I believe that while it's a very good show and I enjoy watching it, I get Seth McFarlane's humor, but it always strikes me as kind of a fan film. It is the kind of film that fans would like to be in. And in fact, as a big Star Trek fan, Seth MacFarlane, who did his first film about that as a teenager, and not a bad one, it's on YouTube, you should check it out, has basically put himself in Star Trek without saying Star Trek, probably to stay out of legal problems. It doesn't mean that it's bad, but it is in fact a fan film, and because of that it has some very simplistic elements to it that I think has the reason that critics are not terribly crazy about it and that fans are. There are two episodes in there specifically that I wanted to mention as being real good. Firestorm, especially, where Alara is dealing with a phobia of fire, is an excellent episode and a very good entry into the series. Another one being Mad Idolatry, where they go to a planet that has an orbit in such a way that time passes at a different rate there than it does for our heroes. And an interesting idea, certainly very innovative for those two episodes. Many of the others, though, smack of being imitative of Next Generation episodes especially, and that's kind of a shame. With the capabilities of doing two shows as good as Firestorm and Mad Idolatry, it is a possibility of being a very good show. I'm going to give it a pass on this because I believe that even the Next Generation didn't do very well in its first season. In fact, the original series didn't have as good a stories in its first season as it did in its second. The show is put out in a way that many people don't know whether it's a drama, a comedy, or a dramedy, which started in the 80s as a form on television where you would have a dramatic show with comic elements in it, more than just the chuckle over the coffee pot at the end of the very tense episode. It's more than comic relief, but a little slice of life. And that's another good thing about The Orville, is that they do give you kind of a slice of life in space. And I think that's another reason that a lot of people enjoy this show, because once again, it's people being people. The only thing that I have a problem with is that their comedy is dated. Much of it makes references to things that are going on right now, which works fine now, but imagine watching this show 10 years from now when all of the figures of speech are changed and all of the political and sociological references change. Now, Star Trek has always been able to overcome this by being out of a specific time. They never used expressions like shooting rockets or silly things like that a lot of science fiction did previous to Star Trek. But in staying kind of out of time, it left them kind of humorless. And in being humorless, it kind of made them a little too sterile. So it's a difficult thing that The Orville is trying to do, to bring in humor, but to make it to where it's going to last over time might be a difficult thing. I believe also that in addition to the other things that I've mentioned of why people like this so much, is that it's also something where you feel like you're on the ride. Here's where I can fantasize being a member of the crew and having a good time with this. This especially was a problem with Discovery, in that it is so dramatic, it is so onerous of everything that's going on, you'd be afraid to be on that ship. Whereas you want to tag along with Captain Mercer and all the others there. I think the show got off to a bad start, but at the same time, they have some very good characters. I like the way a lot of them are written. I don't care for Gordon Malloy. I mean, here's the drinking buddy, and sure, you could make a precedent for that in with John Wayne picture that I saw. It was a war movie, and Kirk Douglas was his best friend, who was also his second in command, his executive officer. And it was it worked there because it was Kirk Douglas. I'm not so certain that it works here. Otherwise, though, I like the other characters. They're all pretty likable. Alara is very interesting. They've never taken on the idea of youth directly the way they've done with Alara's character. And while I could take or leave Isaac, I really do like Bortus. Bortus, at first I thought was going to be kind of a Worf clone. But what it turns out is that he is a blank slate on which you can put all kinds of interesting alien things. And so he can eat anything. They have all males on their planet. They lay eggs. They have kind of a domestic thing. They have games that they play that maim each other. This is delightfully interesting of what they're doing with Bortus, and I'm looking forward to seeing more of what they do with Bortus in this. The main thing, though, that I think is the best part of this show to most people is that it's not on a pay network. You can actually watch it on Fox instead of having to pay for CBS All Access, which I've done and a lot of people have done, and you are less likely to want to enjoy a show that you had to pay for because they kind of forced you into it. And I kind of resent that too. I probably should have waited until it came out on something that we already subscribed to, but I couldn't wait, Trekkie that I am. So here we are. But I think despite that, and in fact, maybe because of that, the Orville has become more popular because it's not Star Trek Discovery. And therefore, some people are saying, well, this is more Star Trek than Star Trek. I disagree. I believe that the Orville is a good show standing on its own feet, and frankly, it is unhindered by the Prime Directive, by all of the extensive canon that 6 series and who knows how many movies now of Star Trek have been made. It's so difficult to get into that universe that it's kind of a relief that the Orville can write its own story. And if we were to say it was Star Trek, the Orville, when this series started, there'd be a lot more criticism of it for not being able to fit itself in canon. Well, Starfleet officers aren't that. You don't have any screw-up captains. You don't have any beer-drinking buddy navigators. You don't have this and you don't have that. So I think it's been helped by Discovery being there. I think that it is a good addition to so many other good sci-fi shows that weren't Star Trek, like Farscape, like Babylon 5, like I was never a big fan of Stargate, but I understand a lot of people like that, and things like, what am I leaving out? Firefly. So these things were all very good shows, having their own universes and having their own stories. I think that the Orville deserves to stand on its own. It does not need Star Trek to lean on. If you agree with this, good. If you don't, I want to hear from you. Go down to the comments and let me know what you think. Also, if you can subscribe, that would make me very happy today. We'll see you next time. Don't go far.